Good day, teachers. Good day po sa lahat ng ating mga viewers sa ating Facebook page. Welcome to our webinar today entitled Take Action on Suicide Prevention for Teachers. So, this is the third part ng ating Embrace program wherein we provide awareness, webinars, and activities to our students, parents, and teachers regarding suicide prevention and suicide awareness. Okay, so before we start, I would like to remind everyone that suicide is a difficult topic and it is important to support one another as we approach this topic today and in the days following. So, self-care is very important. So, you can talk to someone you trust if you feel the need to. Okay, so talk to someone you trust about your experience in our webinar today. So moving on, let us discuss the objectives. This activity aims to, number one, able to educate the teachers about suicide. Number two, be able to spread awareness to teachers about the proper procedures in dealing with students with warning signs of suicide. And number three, to be able to provide support on handling suicide concerns. So now, let us define some phrases that are important and related to suicide. So, these are the suicidal behaviors that a person or an individual can experience. Number one is non-suicidal self-injury. This is a deliberate attempt to cause injury to one's body without the conscious intent to die. So this is self-harm in simple terms. Okay, so an individual can do this like slashing their wrists or arms or pounding their head on the wall or pounding their head with their hands and some other self-harm that they can uh, induce in themselves. Okay, number two, suicidal ideation. So suicidal ideation are suicidal thoughts that include both contemplating death by suicide and planning actions that could result in death. So this is like parang pinaplanan nila, nagko-contemplate na sila, may mga thoughts of suicide na that could result in death. Next is suicide attempt, self-harming behavior that includes an intention to die. Ito, ano na talaga siya, parang ini-injure nila yung sarili nila, they induce harm sa kanilang mga sarili na may intention din to kill themselves. Okay, like drinking poison, or poisoning themselves, overdosing, or 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 talagang cutting their wrist na deep that might cause them or that may result in death. Next is death by suicide. Itong death by suicide, ito yung successful na attempt of suicide. It is important that we use this phrase instead of using committed suicide. Because I have learned from the webinar that I have attended before that the word committed has negative connotation. Marami siyang connotation na nakadikit sa kanya. Like, for example, kapag sinabi natin, di ba, committed a crime or committed a sin. So, parang may negative agad na connotation dun sa committed. And suicide is not like that. It's not a crime, it's not a sin. So, instead of using committed suicide, we can use the phrase death by suicide instead. Okay, so be reminded of that na para magkaroon ng healthy conversations about suicide. So we have to use that phrase. Next, so ano-ano naman yung mga vulnerabilities or risk factors na maaaring magtaas or mag-increase ng likeliness or likelihood ng isang estudyante or isang individual to think of or to commit suicide. So, number one is if meron silang mental health illness like mood disorder, anxiety disorder, conduct disorders. Pangalawa is they have past suicidal behaviors. Pangatlo is substance abuse or they use drugs, illegal drugs, or alcohol. Unstable mood, high impulsivity, rigid thinking patterns, and physical health or chronic illnesses. Next, ano naman yung mga vulnerabilities or risk factors at home? So, kanina, napag-usapan natin yung mga risk factors na within the self. Now, ito naman yung mga environmental factors, particularly sa bahay. So, number one is family history of suicide or suicide attempts. Pangalawa is parental mental illness. Pangatlo is alcohol or substance abuse in the home. Next is history of violence or abuse. So, very important na nalalaman natin kung may mga ganong scenario sa bahay or incident sa bahay na nakakaranas yung ating estudyante ng violence or abuse. Next is divorce or separation or other losses like death of a loved one. So, yan ay maaari din maging risk factor for suicide. Next is tension and aggression between parents. So, nagkakaroon ng disagreement na nag-lead sa talagang grave aggression. And parental lack of time, rejection, and neglect. So, parang hindi siya napapansin sa bahay, na-ignore siya sa bahay, or hindi nabibigyan ng time. Next, another external factors na it might risk a student or individual to suicide is yung sa school or community. So, it might risk or it might increase the risk kung merong learning problems, kung may disengagement from school, lack of connectedness, marginalization, discontinuity in identity, cultural, language, gender, and sexual. Some communities are at heightened vulnerability, yung mga Aboriginal, LGBTQ, and homeless. Yan yung mga ilan sa mga groups or na maaaring vulnerable din. And lastly is yung negative social relationships, including bullying. So, kung may nakakaranas siya ng bullying at school, so maaari din siyang at risk of suicide or suicidal ideation. So, very important na you know your classes, you know your students, you know what's happening inside the room or inside the classroom. May mga kasi, yung mga kala natin pabiro lang, di ba, na parang pinagdidiskitahan sa GC, yung mga pinag-uusapan sa GC, or hindi sinasama sa GC. So, parang yung iba, joke lang, pero ito, maaari din siyang maging cause ng bullying. So, napakaganda na you have to know and you have to check in your students from time to time. Now, let's talk about contagion. Ano naman itong contagion concept sa suicide? So, contagion occurs when suicidal behavior influences an increase in the suicidal behavior of others. There's also multiple suicidal behaviors or suicide deaths that occur within a geographical area or fall within an accelerated time frame may represent a potential cluster. So, although clusters are rare, they are most common among adolescents. So, para siyang domino effect. So, parang halimbawa, may sa isang lugar, sa isang community, town, or small barangay, small town, small city, merong napabalita na nag-death by suicide. Maaaring magkaroon ng contagion kung hindi nahahandle or hindi nagagawa yung post-vention or yung hindi na manage yung incident na iyon. So, maaaring magkaroon ng contagion. Dito sa school, maaari sa mga schools, if may mga incidents of suicide, it might also cause contagion or yun nga, domino effect. So, kailangan talaga na meron ang school community na crisis plan whenever may mga ganitong situation or may mga ganitong incident so that alam natin kung paano i-manage or kung paano ma-prevent yung contagion na mangyari. And very happy to say kasi meron tayong crisis plan na ipinapatupad dito sa ating university whenever may mga ganito tayong mental health crisis na ginagawa. So, meron tayong sinusunod at ini-implement na protocols pagkadating sa mga ganitong usapin. So, yeah. So now, let's talk about the role of cyber and social media sa suicide. So, marami talagang paag-aaral na ngayon na nagsasabi na connected na ang social media and media per se sa suicide. So, may mga studies na nagsasabi na isa to sa nagiging risk factor kung bakit nagkakaroon ng suicidal ideation or suicidal behavior ang mga estudyante or ang mga individual. Kasi there are increasing number of sites, chat rooms, blogs that promote suicidal ideation. May mga nababalitaan din tayo before, di ba, na may mga apps or games sa mobile phones, na ganun din, parang may challenge and then dun mag-lead. So, nagbibigay talaga ng promotion so suicidal ideation. So, isa din yun sa mga dapat nating i-manage. Yan. Methods of suicides are discussed online, and some researchers have suggested that increases in particular methods in recent years may be related to this dialogue. The rapid spread of rumors and details of deaths by suicide is difficult to manage. Yan. So, kung sa social media siya na lumabas or na i-post, so maaaring mahirap na ma-manage yun. So, doon na pumapasok yung contagion. Paradoxically, social media may also hold potential benefits for suicide prevention. Kung ma-manage talaga ng tama, kung monitor natin ng tama at magagamit natin ng tama. Kaya naman kami sa GCCSO, we really use yung platform na ito sa Facebook and yung platform na ito sa online para ma-promote yung iba't ibang suicide prevention and suicide awareness programs natin sa mga estudyante. Not only suicide prevention and suicide awareness, also ginagamit natin tong platform na ito sa pag-promote din ng mental health and yung ma-enhance yung kanilang mga skills para maging protective factor nila against sa mga mental health concerns and especially suicide. So, napakahalaga and napaka-grateful kami sa inyong mga teachers kasi talagang ipinapalawak ninyo yung reach namin sa platform na ito, ipinapalawak ninyo yung or dinidisseminate ninyo and sinusuportahan nyo kami sa advocacy na ito and sa promotion na ito ng suicide prevention and suicide awareness and also mental health awareness. Next, so now, ano naman yung kailangan nating i-look out sa ating mga estudyante? Ano ba yung mga kailangan nating tingnan or i-observe sa mga estudyante now that they are in school na, they have face-to-face classes na, so it's important that we look for warning signs or signals, red flags that you can look out for sa mga estudyante if ever they are thinking of or they are feeling suicidal. So number 1, loss of interest in former activities. So kung may mga estudyante kayo na medyo nawawala ng gana sa school, yung mga gusto nilang ginagawa naman before pero ngayon nawawala na sila ng gana. Pangalawa is withdrawal from social contact. So medyo lumalayo sila sa kanilang mga kaklase, lumalayo sa kanilang mga group of friends, so mga circle of friends. Medyo parating mapag-isa, parating tahimik lang. So you can look out for that. Next is difficulty concentrating, problems with judgment and memory. Yan, maaari din natin makita yan kapag sila ay gumagawa ng mga activities nila or sa klase, hindi sila makapag-concentrate ng maayos. Dramatic shift in quality of academic performance. Ayan. So, kung dati, halimbawa, first quarter, okay naman siya. Tapos biglang drastic na change sa mga grades niya, sa academic performance niya, biglang tinamad mag-aral or hindi na nagpapasa ng projects, hindi na nagpapasa ng modules, ng mga performance tasks. So, maaari din siyang maging maaari natin yung tingnan, i-observe. Feelings of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness often expressed in written assignments. Ayan, kung may mga activities sa school, tapos may mga essays, may mga pa-drawing, ayan. So, maaaring ma-express nila doon sa mga activities nila sa school. Ayan. Next is sleep disturbances. Ito, hindi natin sila namomonitor sa bahay. Although, halimbawa, kung maaaring maging manifestation nito is nalilate sila sa school. Yan, o kaya inaantok sila sa school kasi hindi pala nakakatulog sa bahay ng maayos. So, or kulang sa tulog. O kaya naman sa school, tulog ng tulog, laging inaantok. So, maybe you can check out or check in on them and sa parents. Strong and overt expressions of anger and rage. Yan. Excessive use of drugs and or alcohol. Promiscuous behavior o talagang reckless behavior. They are engaging in reckless behavior. Uncharacteristic delinquent or thrill-seeking behavior. So, self-mutilation, occurrence of previous suicidal gestures or attempts, planning for death, making final arrangements, giving away favorite possessions. So, parang, halimbawa, kung friend mo sila sa Facebook or nakikita ninyo sa mga posts nila, so, maaari kayong tumingin din. Or maybe you can assign someone na from your class na nakikita niyo yung mga post ng isa't isa, diba? You can check in on them na kung may mga ganong mga postings and mga tweets or Instagram posts. So now, as teachers, what can we do? Anong pwede nating gawin? Ano ang pwede nating i-act? So, take action nga ang kailangan natin, diba? Ang title natin. So, take action. We should take action against suicide. So, we have to reduce vulnerabilities at school. So, ano-ano yun? Yeah, number 1, ensure school is safe and accepting, especially for vulnerable students. Enhance sense of belonging, increase connectedness and engagement, show respect for differences. So, may mga teachers kasi, hindi ko ina-identify na dito sa school yun. Pero may mga teachers in general na medyo strict sila sa school, strict sila sa mga activities, strict sila sa, halimbawa, sa pagre-recite or pagre-reporting, nakakapagsabi na ng hindi magaganda sa kanilang mga estudyante, and it might scar them, it might be harsh or harmful for them. Talagang nag-i-scar yan sa kanila. Yan. So, we have to ensure that our school, our classroom, is a safe and accepting environment. Build on protective factors. Yan nga. Yung may reinforce yung sense of belongingness nila, yung mga friendships, yung strong, parang connectedness sa loob ng classroom. Yan ay mga protective factors. Provide skill building, opportunities to build self-esteem. So, yung mga simpleng ginagawa ninyo sa school, yung mga curricular activities, yan, skill building na yan. Pero, syempre, kailangan lang din natin na maging balance, diba? Balance, kung, if I may say, parang yung school nila at nababalance pa nila yung personal life nila, yung kanilang pagre-rest or yung boundaries nila at home, or yung pahinga nila, or yung, kaya maganda din na meron tayong ganitong asynchronous time to help them na magkaroon ng balance na work and school. So, kung may mga ganong kayong activities, curricular activities sa classroom, so, isa sa magandang pagbibuild ng skills nila. Pero, make sure din also na nababalanse. Hindi masyadong nabobombard ang mga estudyante. Kasi kung bombarded din sila ng mga task, activities, bombarded sila ng napakaraming need na requirements, so maaari din na maging risk factor yon, or maaari din na maging danger din sa kanila. Dahil hindi naman lahat ng mga estudyante ay may pare-parehas na facing. So, also, opportunities to build their self-esteem. Katulad na nabanggit ko kanina, kapag may mga reporting, instead of giving destructive na criticism, so make or try to give them constructive criticism, constructive na feedback sa kanila. Also, look out for triggers. Kung ano ba yung mga nakakapagpa-trigger, may mga ganun bang estudyante. Yan. Also, identify students at risk and listen. So, kung naka-identify na kayo, tanungin nyo sila, makinig, and make sure din na masasabi nyo sa kanila na safe yung kanilang information na dinidisclose sa inyo, so that you can build trust. Minimize the risk for contagion. Yun nga, katulad na nabanggit natin, kailangan ma-manage natin yung risk for contagion. And katulong yun naman kami sa GCCSO para ma-handle and ma-manage yung mga incidents, mga similar incidents pagdating sa suicide, and have a plan for help. So, napaka-important that you refer sa amin, you give referral sa mga estudyante sa tingin ninyo kailangan ng tulong. So, referral din po talaga ang kung hindi nyo talaga kaya, hindi nyo na ma-handle yung isang estudyante na nag-disclose sa inyo, maaari nyo po silang i-refer sa amin. Next po. So, let's talk about suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. So, bigyan natin ng pagpapakahulugan po yung tatlong yun: suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. So, suicide prevention these are efforts to reduce the risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior amongst students in a systematic way. So, itong mga ginagawa po namin na mga webinars and activities sa Embrace program is part of suicide prevention. So, nandiyan po yung mga awareness, magbibigay ng knowledge, information, about suicide. So, para ma-reduce your risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior. Next, what is intervention? These are practices involving recognizing and responding to students with suicidal ideation or behavior. These are practices involved in supporting vulnerable students transitioning to and from mental health care. So, itong intervention, ito na yung mga estudyante na identified na natin. So, paano tayo nagre-respond sa kanila? Paano natin minamanage? Paano natin hinahandle yung mga ganong cases or incidents? So, and yung post-vention, if ever na may mga incidents na sa school, so ano naman yung ginagawa natin? These are practices or efforts ng school community sa pag-respond sa mga suspected, attempted, or death by suicide. So, ang lahat po na ito ay available po or meron pong established na ang GCCSO. So, itong ginagawa natin is we really have in close partnership with teachers para sa suicide prevention, suicide intervention, and post-vention. So, helpful prevention strategies. Ano yung mga pwede nating gawin for prevention? So, safe and accepting school culture, social emotional learning, coping skills, conflict resolution, early identification and treatment of mental health problems, gatekeeper training, and information dissemination for staff, parents, and students. So, yan yung ginagawa natin. Meron tayong information dissemination sa Embrace program natin. Yan. So, talagang binibigay namin siya annually sa teachers, sa students, and sa parents. Ano naman yung mga kailangan i-avoid ng mga strategies? So, suicide awareness curriculum with students, particularly if done in a single or standalone lessons. So, hindi siya nagiging effective kapag talagang ibinibigay lang siya sa single or standalone na subject or lessons. Pangalawa, assigning suicide as a central or sole focus of study. So, sa pag-uusapan, suicide lang talaga ang pag-uusapan. Also, hindi din effective kapag may mga large assemblies with guest speakers who talk about suicide or events that have the potential to glorify, glamorize suicide, and peer counseling related to suicide. So, kailangan individual counseling. Kami sa GCCSO, ang binibigay namin ay na mga prevention webinars ay nakafocus lahat sa protective factors or ano yung mga preventive. Hindi siya parang intervention. Ang binibigay namin is kung paano ma-prevent. So, doon kami nagfo-focus. Kasi nga, yun ay isang effective way. Next, helpful intervention strategies. Supporting vulnerable students, ensure staff understand role and limits of competence. Ayan, kayo bilang mga teachers, kayo ay may role na to reach out to the students, identify them, and also role din ninyo na kung hindi na kaya ng inyong competence, so that's the time na mag-refer na kayo sa amin. Support staff with caring adult role, identify vulnerable students, work with clinical staff when involved, create school safety plan for each student as needed, and implement and monitor plan as needed. So, very important din. Ang practical example nito is yung mga anecdotal record natin. So, namamonitor natin kung sino talaga yung mga nangangailangan. Nakikita natin ano ba yung mga experiences nila sa school or sa classroom na kailangan natin i-monitor. So, yeah. Intervention strategies to avoid. Peer intervention models with inadequate adult supervision and monitoring, recruitment of gatekeepers who are uncomfortable and unready for their role, and counseling of high-risk students by unqualified professionals. So, I think naman, lahat naman tayo trained na for doing this kasi may mga iba kaming ibinibigay. So, pwede niyong balikan yung mga other previous na webinars namin regarding suicide so that you will be more knowledgeable, you will be more enlightened regarding suicide. So, you can be ready for the role as teacher. Yeah. Also kami sa GCCSO, lahat po kami ay qualified professionals, registered guidance counselors. Kaya very qualified naman kami to counsel high-risk students. Pero if ever man hindi kami pa rin, hindi na rin sakop ng aming level of expertise, that's the time din na nire-refer na namin sa psychologist or psychiatrist. Next, helpful post-vention strategies. Ano naman yung mga post-vention if ever man na may mga incidents na. So, understand the phases of post-vention. Have a plan for who does what at each phase of post-vention. So, sa amin, sa ginawa or binuo ng GCCSO din, and the school, the university, na crisis response protocol. So, meron din yan, yung post-vention, first 24 hours, the next 24 hours, during the first month, and planning for the future. Meron yan. Merong naka-indicate, merong naka-specify kung ano ang mga dapat gawin post-vention. Lastly, practice deliberate self and team care. So, hindi lang sa mga estudyante nagbibigay ng self-care or aftercare, also nagbibigay din sa mga faculty members and members of the school community. So, nagbibigay din ng mga aftercare for them to avoid din yung contagion sa kanila. Okay. Or avoid din yung mga iba pang risk sa mga faculty members or employees ng university. So, yun. Ang mga kailangan nating sa isip at isa puso na mga intervention, prevention, and post-vention na strategies na you can practice. So, again, thank you for listening for our webinar for this afternoon. I hope you have learned something. Again, you can always revisit our previous videos about suicide so that you can be more knowledgeable and you can be more aware, you can be more enlightened about suicide. If you have questions or if you have something to inquire, so you may email me sa aking email address, majanine.bautista@ue.edu.ph. So my resource is from the SAMHSA Toolkit Suicide Post-Vention Guidelines, South Australia, Principal Leadership 2009, and ASP Post-Vention Strategies for School Personnel, Kutcher 2008. Thank you very much, teachers.